Welcome back to the podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. And today I welcome my friend Damon to the show. I'm excited about this conversation today. And I had the pleasure of going on Damon's podcast the other day. So I had a really good time talking to Damon, and I know we're going to have a great conversation today. Like minds, and the man's full of drive and ambition and lots of things to share with us today. So I'm excited about this. So Damon Lembi is a 2 times best-selling author, the host of the Learn It All podcast, and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has upskilled over 2 million people. Drawing from his prior baseball career, Damon brings an athlete's perspective to leadership. Through his journey, he has gained invaluable insights into what helps organizations grow, how great leaders learn, and why Learn It All companies outpace their competitors every time. So welcome to the show today, Damon. Great to have you on, like I said. I'd, first of all, really like to hear, obviously shared a little bit about your story there, but a little bit about this transition from going from baseball, you had this baseball career, and then getting into leadership. Like, how did that come about?
Well, Johnny, first of all, it's an honor to be here. So thanks for having me. And Damon Lemby, and growing up, it was all about sports for me. By the time I was a sophomore in high school, I knew that I wanted to be a baseball player. So I went all in, put everything into it. Turned out pretty good for me. I was a high school All-American. Out of high school, I got drafted to go play in the minor leagues, but I also had a full ride scholarship. I went the college route instead, got hurt, left my school, dealt with a little imposter syndrome, went over to Arizona State, played there, had a great career, and I was ready to get drafted again. Had a great year. This is back in 1995, so pre-internet. I was sitting, or 1994, I'm sitting in my hotel room. My roommate, Jacob Cruz, got a phone call, first round draft choice by the San Francisco Giants. 10 other guys on my team got drafted. My call never came. And so here I was, 22 years old. My whole identity was as a baseball player. And I didn't really have any other jobs. I'd never done anything else. And it was pretty depressing. And I didn't really know what to do with myself because I didn't know if any of my skills were transferable from baseball into the business world. And that's really where the pivot started for me.
Okay, so you went into like the business world, and then you started developing in this like leadership, this leadership path.
Yeah, I mean, at first, I was really lucky. I came from a family with a big real estate company in the Bay Area, a hotel chain, even a Chinese restaurant. But I was intimidated. I didn't know, I didn't want to go work for this big real estate company. So I started at this little computer training company that my dad was just starting. As an entrepreneur, he was trying to solve his own problem. He wanted to learn how to digitize our company portfolio when it came to real estate. So I started there as a receptionist. And I did it for 2 reasons. One, like I mentioned, I didn't know what my skills were like. And two, I didn't want to be, daddy's boy who got started off in like a senior level position. I wanted to kind of like work my way up and go from there. And that's what I did. To this day, I've probably answered more calls than anybody at the front desk. I taught classes like Microsoft Excel, Word, stuff like that. I did sales. And then fast forward about 5 years, right around 2000 during the dot-com boom, especially where I was from, San Francisco, the CEO wasn't working out. The board was replacing him. I threw my hat in the ring and I said, hey, look, I've taught classes. I've closed our biggest deals. Can I have a shot? And they gave me a shot. And that's where I stepped into the leadership role, probably at the beginning of around 2000. And Johnny, it's special this year. We're heading into our 30th anniversary. This is our 30th anniversary, and I've been at Learn It ever since.
And 25 years as CEO, is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Amazing.
25 years as CEO, been through 3 economic downturns that we survived, made a lot of great friends, a lot of great relationships. Unfortunately, my father, who's my idol, passed away of cancer about 10 years ago. So it's kind of tough, or 14 years ago, really, heading into our 30-year anniversary, because so much of what I've been able to accomplish was what him and my mom helped me set up and put me in a position to. So, but it's been a great journey. Hasn't been linear. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but happy to share whatever you'd like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a couple of things that are kind of coming out to me straight away that I'm really intrigued about. Well, the first thing, I guess it's like that's quite a step to throw your hat in the ring for like CEO. Um, I mean, what kind of like inspired you to do that? Were there? I guess I'm speaking to the person who's like, I want to do that, but I've got a lot of fear. It's like, who am I to be doing that? Did any of that come over you before you threw your hat in the ring, or was it just like, I'm ready?
No, I've always dealt with fear and limiting beliefs and self doubt and everything. But for me, it was really when my baseball career ended again, I said, I felt like I had really big shoes to fill. Again, everybody in San Francisco kind of knows who Frank Lembi, my grandfather, and my dad Walt was, especially when it comes to real estate. And I said to myself, I've got to, there's got to be something that I could be great at. And I knew that the only way to be great at something it was just kind of dive in and put in the work. And when I got to learn it, when I first started, I was really surprised, Johnny, of like people lacked the work ethic that I was used to when it came to playing sports. And I kind of saw that over the years. People were late, they weren't working hard, and I wanted to go all in and make sure that my family's investment was okay, and I wanted to prove and give back. And so by the time it came to replace the CEO, I kind of felt like I was the obvious choice. I mean, we were about a 40, 50 person company, but I've gained a lot of respect from the employees by then because not saying it's the best thing to do, but I was probably working 60, 70 hours a week, rolled up my sleeves, and I was leading by example anyways. So I thought that I would be a good fit. But that doesn't mean that once I stepped into that role that I didn't have any limiting doubts, limiting beliefs. I always did. I just kind of did my best to work through them.
And is there any particular ways that you found useful? Because I'm always curious to hear how people are working through these challenges that come up, these limiting beliefs, because my perception is we all have them. And certainly everyone I spoke to, no matter how much money or whatever they've achieved in life, they've always told me, they've got limiting beliefs. Is there something that you found useful to like work through them, or has it just been like a case of taking more action?
Well, I really developed, I didn't really know I was doing this, but when I was in school, at the first place I was at, it was Pepperdine University, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Like I didn't even know. I mean, I was used to being the best on the baseball field, but you get there and everybody's as good as you are. So that was my first dealing with imposter syndrome. I ended up getting hurt and I left and I got another opportunity to go play at Arizona State, which is this great big baseball school. And a lot of people told me, don't go to Arizona State, go to a smaller school, finish up your baseball career and get your degree and move on. And I really said, forget it. I'm going to go for it. And I built this 4-step framework really of overcoming imposter syndrome. And the first step is really what I call labeling what your fear is. What are you afraid of? And I call it purposeful awfulizing. You look at, let's say you take a year in advance and you go for it. What's the worst thing that would happen? And in baseball, it was I don't make the team. At Learn It or at work, or how I coach people is, let's say you take a leadership role and you fail. Hey, you can survive that. You can move forward with that. So once you're able to step one, label your fear, and you know that's something you can get over with, step number 2 is hard work. I don't think there's any replacement for working hard. You get in baseball, I would be the first person at practice. I'd be the last one to leave. At Learn It, I always had mentors and I had coaches and I did a lot of reading and learning and I just immersed myself with that work. And when you do that, it kind of shoves the anxiety out of the way because you're too busy working hard. Step 3 is deliberate practice. It's very easy to procrastinate. In baseball, I had a hard time hitting curveballs. So I'd take batting practice and I'd do 1,000, hit 1,000 curveballs. At work, let's use an example of giving a keynote speech. If I had a tough part with a transition or a hook, I would just practice that over and over and over until I got better at it. Then I'd move on. And then the final step, step 4, is I'd call it learn and let go. Whether it's, stepping into the batter's box, stepping on stage, or whatever it is, stop thinking about your technique or what you're doing. Just go out there, give it your best shot. You might do great, knock it out of the park. You might fall flat on your face, but you're going to get a learning opportunity out of everything. You can always learn, grow, and evolve. And the other thing, Johnny, is I just think too many of us, me especially, we're too hard on ourselves. And just taking an opportunity and trying is more than half the battle. There's so many people who don't even try and go for that chance because they're afraid of failing. So the fact that on step 4 that you went out there and you gave it your best, you should just give yourself a little pat on the back because that's more than what most people do.
Yeah, I have one mentor who always talks about like celebrating. So I schedule like a 2 minute celebration end of the day to be like, put some music on and be like, yeah, I did this, and this reinforces your nervous system to do more of it. So I love that. We still catch myself, the odd critique and stuff like that. But yeah, just scheduling that celebration is something that's really important. So love what you said there as well, reinforcing it.
And one thing I like to do too, especially if it goes well, is I have a little, I don't know, notebook where I kind of write down something if something went well. I don't use it over email. I actually write it down, and then if I have a off day, I could refer back to that. And it's kind of nice to look back at some of the accomplishments you've had.
Oh, I love that. Like collecting a log that you can refer to, and your brain's like, oh, evidence. It sounds
Yeah,
like, yeah,
like a success journal. That
yeah.
maybe you don't even need to share with anybody. But let's say you go out and you lose a big deal, or if you're trying to get a date with a girl and that doesn't go well, at least you can go back and look to some of the successes you've had in the past. Big wins, and it helps you keep in mind that you are able to achieve greatness.
We forget our own greatness. Now that's a good one. I like what you said about like working hard and like that practice as well. I personally found for me like preparation gives me a lot more. I know this podcast is about confidence, but preparation for me gives me a lot of like confidence. So I remember like really struggling with job interviews or public speaking, and I would just like drill practicing saying it out loud, not in your head, out loud. It's different. Saying it out loud again and again, and that would like help my confidence. But that sounds a bit like what you're saying as well, like with all that practice, and when you actually come to bat or whatever, that's one of the steps of the imposter syndrome.
You're 100% 100% right, and I should have actually mentioned that. Heading into game time, whatever that is, I always look back and say I put in so much practice and effort that if the ground ball is hit to me or when I'm on stage, I have that confidence knowing that I was prepared. And I'd also do a lot of like visualization of being successful at something, and what it's like delivering a great keynote on stage, or when it's over with, feeling good about myself. But absolutely, that's like in between step 3 and step 4 is just knowing that you've put that preparation and that effort in exactly like you said, and that's what's always helped me with confidence.
Yeah, knowing it's out of your control a little bit, but the preparation is within the control. It's just cool. I'd like to hear a little bit about your visualization. Is that something you do every day? Is it an everyday practice? Is it like for key moments?
Key moments, I would say. I probably should do it more often, but I mean, even sometimes it may sound a little weird, but if I have a hard time sleeping, I might even visualize back in the day in baseball where I would just hit line drives up the middle. And for those people who played baseball, that's just like being in your flow in a good spot. And so I would just kind of think about that. But now, if I have to have a difficult conversation with an employee, or I'm going into a big customer meeting, or I've got an important podcast, I will do a little visualization. And when I am visualizing it, it's like, don't do your visualization and be mediocre. Knock it out of the park. You know what I mean? Visualize yourself absolutely crushing it. Why not? And then go from there.
No, that's really good preparation as well. Just getting that mind ready. Yeah, it makes me think of my kind of own visualization. Certainly something I'd like to get back on top of a bit more as well. In that sense.
Do you do it all the time or just key moments?
Uh, Me, it's kind of like more key moments like yourself, but I think it's quite good when I've been in the practice of even thinking about the day ahead. That would like really help me if it was like a big day and it's just like thinking how it's going to go, obviously, but not in a controlling sense because you can't control anything. But it's like I'm thinking about doing this, but that gave me a lot more direction, just thinking out the day ahead of me and things like that. So. I've also done it unconsciously as well. So it can be, you're visualizing something in advance, you don't realize you're doing it. I feel like we do that of things we're very confident in as well. But it could also be applied to things you don't feel so confident in if you consciously start visualizing it a little bit more and practicing, of course.
Yeah, and I think that that helps build a muscle. I mean, I don't know anything about science, but I think it helps if you get in a practice of that. I think it helps you just get better at it. And especially if it's something that you're uncomfortable with, visualizing being successful, I think is a good step in the right direction.
Love it. I wanna go backwards a little bit towards what we were talking about at the start of the show about coming out of baseball and then going into being a receptionist and then working up like 5 years later. Obviously you're the CEO, which is awesome. But yeah, it's about the identity piece because it sounds like you had this identity that I'm a baseball player, and then suddenly you're moving away from that world. I know a lot of people go through things like you might go through a job loss, a business loss, a relationship loss, a marriage loss, maybe even a health thing, and people can have this identity like challenge and things like that. For you, like did was that a bit of a challenge when you came out of baseball, or were you so focused on your new career?
It was a huge challenge. My whole life was a baseball player. That's it. I mean, I would come back from college and, you over a break, you go to the local bar and everybody's asking you what's going on with baseball and everything like that, right? And then you come home and then that's no longer you. And on top of it, I was like, again, like, are these skills that I picked up playing baseball, are they even transferable? And what I tend to work with people on these days, especially, and it's more of a mentoring thing. I don't do like actual coaching like you do, but I work with a lot of people who lose their jobs, and maybe they've been an accountant for 20 years in their whole career, but they want to get into sales or they want to get into marketing. And what I say is, what you learned in your last profession, I could almost guarantee you is transferable over to your new profession. So don't look at that as a waste. Look at all the experience, good and bad, that you had, and go for this new career. And when it comes to identity, you shouldn't look at yourself as like, I'm a baseball player or I'm a podcast host. I look at my identity as like, I'm a good person. I have my core values of whether it's integrity or whatever it is, humility, and that's who I am. And these different jobs or roles are just different moments in my life. So there's my core of what my identity really is, and it just comes and goes. And that's what I've been able to learn over the years.
Okay, yeah. So it's not like the identity's not like fixed to a certain position or role.
Title.
It's like you and what you embody.
Yeah, it's what I believe that I embody, which I just want to do my best to being a good person. Everybody makes mistakes, and just be yourself. I'm not trying to, I think that if you're a genuine, authentic person, especially when it comes to leading people, Johnny, they're going to connect with you and follow you a lot more than if you're trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not.
So yeah, living like your true self and like lead in leadership roles, rather than something else. Because yeah, I don't know about you, but I can usually energetically pick it up from people as well. And I've certainly been there when
100%.
I've been faking things in my life as well. And looking back, as like, yeah, I know people can kind of like sense it and stuff like that, especially women. So yeah, it's
Totally. And not only is it bad to fake who you are, because people see through that. I think the other thing that you've probably had a struggle with, and I know I have, but I don't anymore, is comparing yourself to others. You know, I mean, when I first got into the business world after baseball, I immediately started comparing myself to some of my friends, especially in the .com days where everybody was paper millionaires. I'm like, these guys have a big head start on me. You know, they've got this, career, everything that they're doing. And then I just came to realize that comparing yourself is just negative energy. Be happy for what people have accomplished, good for them. And also realize that maybe what they say or how they show up on social media, they're not as great as they make themselves out to be. And I think it's just more important to be grateful for what you have and focus on yourself. Like you said, there's only certain things you can control. You can't control what other people do or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, comparison's a huge one as well in this day and age, especially with like the social media things like that. And yeah, like honestly, like it's for me, like it's definitely created quite a lot of misery because it's like you'll see, you might see the person with like the jet or like the hustle, they're hustling a certain way. Like, I want that role, I want to do that, and you're like, but it's not you. It's not like you're not like going deep, but like what your heart wants, who you are. Um, it's just yeah, and then that can be quite energy draining when you're trying to be something you're not. I find personally.
100%. And for good or bad, I've had the fortune to grow up and be around some really successful people thanks to my dad. And a lot of times, these individuals who may have tens of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars and a jet, sometimes a lot of them have miserable lives and miserable families. So it's not all cracked up what you think it's going to be all the time. And one thing my dad always would say is the ones who talk about it the most and brag about it the most are usually the ones with miserable lives because why do you need to brag about it? You should just be comfortable and confident with what you got.
No, it's very interesting. Sometimes perceptions can be deceived and things like that. And I know for me, it's like when I used to like be sad about being single, and then you'd see lots of happy couples, but it doesn't necessarily always. It wasn't always like that. It might just be a moment where they're smiling for the camera, going from the other side of money. But yeah, just a note to the listener that sometimes yeah things aren't what they're perceived as. So yeah,
And
that's
and they can work out. That reminds me of I didn't get married till I was probably 45 or no, 43 or something like that. And I would go to some of my sister's parties or other people's parties, and they had these kids and everything, and I was single, and I kind of was dejected. And then fast forward 10 years, I've got a great, beautiful wife and two healthy kids, and I kind of laugh and look back and say, man, I would have been pretty miserable if I would have married, earlier on when I wasn't ready with some of the girls I dated. So everything sometimes turns out for a reason. But I do remember exactly what you're talking about, being at those kind of events, feeling like an oddball, where everybody else has kids and they seem so happy. And I'm just kind of sitting there, having a couple extra cocktails to make myself feel better.
that's interesting. Yeah, and I'm so glad it's worked out for you, Damon, as well. That's amazing. Damon, I want to hear a little bit about the learn it all like mindset, and you say confidence comes from curiosity. Yeah, just like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I wrote a book in 2023. I got to give my wife some credit for pushing me to do it, the Learn It All mindset and tools and traits. And it's just kind of about my journey playing for a couple of great Hall of Fame baseball coaches and learning from my dad. And I think the top traits of a Learn It All, on the other side of the fence is a know it all, right? Somebody who's got all the answers, they have everything figured out, they're not open to anything, they're stuck in their ways. A learn it all is somebody who's humble, has integrity, has courage, and is curious, is open minded and open to ideas and seeing different ways to do things. And I think when you are curious, I think it leads to confidence because you're open to trying things. And really, that's what the whole learn it all mentality. That I know it's a lot like growth mindset, sure, but it's something I try to model at Learn It with my team. And I think if you model it as a leader, which by the way, for your listeners out there, I think we're all leaders, especially if we want to be, whether you're a parent, a coach, you're an older sibling. I think leadership starts with self leadership, how you carry yourself, how you go about your business, and other people can follow you from there. So you don't have to, lead a 100-person team or whatever. It's just that's the leadership mentality, the learn it all mentality that I try to use. Which in today's day and age, with the rapid pace of AI and change, I think you have to always be constantly adapting and evolving and staying curious about how you could do things better and differently.
Yeah, just with such it's always an uncertain world and things are always changing. But being able to lead yourself, I like what you're saying about that, moving forward. I'm just curious, Dave, you'd have to share everything, in your life, your daily routine or anything like that. But is there anything that for you, like each day, like is like a non-negotiable to like lead yourself that you do for you each day?
Well, one thing that I need to get back on is I start off every quarter, month, and day with my big three, which is like what are my top priorities. And I've gotten away from that a little bit. I need to get back. It's something I've been telling myself because when you do that, and it could be health related, it could be work related, it could be family related. And what I would do is I would have my top three priorities of the day, and I'd get those done, and I'd write them down, and I'd also talk about what I'm grateful for, and I'd write down I'm grateful for my kids, or I'm grateful for learning, or whatever it is, and that helps put things in perspective. I've wandered off of that over the last 3 or 4 months, but that's something I need to reset and do. But that is one daily routine. The other, which is kind of a non-negotiable for me, is I read for 15, 20 minutes when I first wake up instead of, immediately going into email or nonsense social media. So that's something that's been healthy for me. And I just need to figure out a better workout routine. But the non-negotiables, I think, are doing a little reading. And then I want to get back to my big three, which helps me kind of prioritize and set up my day.
Love that. Bit of gratitude, bit of like your top three, not like a million to dos, but like there's always things to be doing, but the real top threes for you. And yeah, the reading. Yeah, I must admit, you've inspired me to get back into reading. Like I'd have years where I read, all those books. Less so now, but yeah, it's always good when you're reading some good information and getting into the brain. So
Yeah, and the thing I'll say about that is I love it, Johnny, when people tell me, "Oh, I don't have time to read," and then 2 minutes later I'll ask them, "Hey, have you seen any good shows in Netflix?" And they could hammer out 10 shows they're
yeah.
watching. And I'm not saying you got to read 100 books. It's because I like to say also, because I'm a learn it all leader, but learning without doing is treason in the sense that you read less or read the same book twice, but you got to learn how to apply what you read as well. Whether it's around nutrition or in business or parenting or whatever it is you're reading, because if you just go through the motions and read and you're not being intentional about that and you're not applying, you're just wasting your time. So it shouldn't be about, how many books you read or whatever. For me, it's just, hey, I want to start off my day with something healthy. And to me, reading a book, about something, a biography especially, is really helpful.
I like the point you made about taking action from it, as well. Like one of my favorite teachers, Peter Sage, says, "Learning and not doing is the same as not knowing." He had something like that. It was like not applying it. Or maybe he might have got it from Napoleon Hill or something like similar to that. Not oh that was it was it like knowledge is not power. It was like the action is power or something. Then I had another guy I learned from. He said activity is power. What he meant by that was consistent action is activity. So it's like he said action is power and then activity is powerful. Yeah, so that resonated for me. But yeah, just the knowledge by itself, it's good for the mind. But yeah, like I like what you said about actually utilizing it.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact quote. It just escaped my mind. But learning could also be the greatest way of procrastination, not doing anything,
Mm,
just continuously learning. I think you got to apply and take action. Activity and consistent activity is the best way to actually make learning or growth sticky, which is most important.
mm. I know some great books. I've got my favourite book that's over there. It's like
What is
it's
it?
got some great journal books. It's called From the Core by John Wineland. It's a book about I'm very into like the healthy masculine or what the healthy masculinity dynamics are. Just been at a workshop on that, but yeah, John kind of like talks about that. We're not talking about some of the things that are in this world today, like this, do that, but like
Yeah.
genuine kind of being a place of safety and all that kind of thing. But it's a really good book and leading yourself first, like we've been talking about, coming from a heart-led place. But it's a it's a book with lots of questions and things like that. But when I started going through them, that's when the changes started like happening in my life, not just skimming over them and reading the book. I've read the book a few times, but it's like those questions and those prompts are really useful.
Yeah, maybe put it in the show notes. I'll check it out. Like there's a book by Ryan Holiday called "Obstacle is the Way," which I've probably read 4 times, and it's just a good reminder a lot of times of how to overcome obstacles and constraints, and it's a good thing to refer back to. It's great when you come up with a book like that help you with actual behavior change.
Ryan Holiday, yeah, I've never read any of his, but I have to check out some of his work as well. Got quite a lot of
Yeah, check out
books.
"Obstacle is the Way." Great book, easy read.
Oh, awesome! I'm looking at my room. You can't see it in the camera, but there's quite a lot of books around, a little bit behind. But yeah, I'm looking at your bookshelf behind you, Damon. There's plenty.
Well, I mean, hey, I got to admit, part of the reason why I have a lot of books here is I got a 3-year-old and 7-year-old, and we needed more room for toys. So my wife shipped all these books off here. But um, I think, yeah, I loved reading. I got that from my dad. I mean, I always wanted to emulate him, and he always was reading. And that's what's helped me. And I think this is important for your listeners. I don't have a degree from Harvard or any of these places. I dove into learning, and I was never a big student in school, but I wanted to be a great leader or great whatever I did. So I took to reading and I took to learning, and now there's podcasts and there's mentorship and all these things you can do. So you don't have to have one of those fancy degrees. It's okay if you do, don't get me wrong, but you can be just as successful. My most successful friends barely made it through junior college and they've crushed it in their professional career.
That's amazing. It's about yeah. I went for a degree and things like that, but it's not until I started applying things in the world that makes a difference. So
That's
yeah,
true.
that's a very valid point you're sharing there about you not having need all these fancy things. It's about what you're doing and in life moving forward. And I know obviously you've got plenty of resources on that, and you're already helping people like move forward in their life as well, and in leadership as well. So yeah, Damon, like as we get to wrap up, there's loads more we could talk about today, but yeah, I know you offer a lot out there. Is there a final point that maybe you want to share with us today that's either a recap or maybe it's something else you want to add or feel cool to mention? And also, where can the listener find you or find some more resources from you?
Well, one thing I like to say is great leaders aren't born or made, they're always in the making. And I think that's important. No matter how successful you are in whatever area you're at, there's always more to learn and more to grow. So I think that's important for everybody out there. And as far as where to connect with me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Damon Lembi on LinkedIn. Johnny was on my podcast, the Learn It All podcast. I love it, the opportunities to learn from people. So check that out. My book's The Learn It All Leader. You can find that anywhere. And my company website is learnit.com. If you find a class on there that you want to take, whether it's how to have a difficult conversation, emotional intelligence, or Excel, send me a note on LinkedIn, and I'll give you a free class. I mean, the classes are $250, but I'll give you a free class. Just say that you heard it on Johnny's podcast here, and
Amazing.
happy to do that.
Oh, amazing, Damon. Thank you so much for doing that and the value you're giving. Yeah, On behalf of the listener, I want to thank you for that. Appreciate that very great gesture
Of
from
course.
you, and everything you've shared today. Thank you for coming on in your time.
Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.